Hey everybody, how's it going? Extreme Trends here. When a crime is committed, we immediately jump to the conclusion that the culprit will be spending time behind bars. But have we ever stopped and considered exactly how long some of these people actually spend in prison when they get convicted? Well, today we're going to be taking a look at 10 people who spent their lives in prison. Number 10, Alexandra Pekushkin. Some people kill others because they suffer from illnesses, but this man committed his crime seemingly just for sport. Alexandra, also known as the chessboard killer, is a Russian serial killer who is believed to have killed between 48 and 60 people in Bista Park in Moscow. His first murder is believed to have taken place in 1992, before he moved to a high level of murder in 2001, where his aim was to kill exactly 64 people and was believed to be a part of a massacre competition with another serial killer who was convicted of 53 murders in 1992. He was arrested in 2006 and once apprehended, he led the police to where he kept the bodies of his victims. Alexandra was kept in a glass cage for his own protection and was granted the sentence of life in prison, with the first 15 years spent in solitary confinement, a punishment clearly fitting for the crime he committed. Number 9, Morgan Geiser and Anissa Weier. Morgan Geiser and Anissa Weier were involved in what have been dubbed as the Slender Man stabbing. The Slender Man stabbing occurred on Saturday, May 31st, 2014 in Wisconsin, when the 12-year-old girls lured Peyton Leutner, of the same age, into the woods and stabbed her 19 times in an attempt to impress the fictional character Slender Man. Fortunately, Peyton was able to make it to the emergency room in time after being found on the road. She eventually made it to the trial of the two girls to ensure that they would both be put away for a very long time. Both girls were consequently not found guilty by reason of mental disease and will serve at least 3 years in a mental hospital as part of the plea deal. The trial was concluded and the girls were sentenced in October of 2017. Number 8, Anders Behring Breivik. Born in 1979, Anders Behring Breivik is a Norwegian far-right terrorist who committed the 2011 Norwegian attacks. On July the 22nd, 2011, he killed 8 people by detonating a bomb van in Oslo and then shot dead 69 participants of a Workers' Youth League summer camp on the island of Utoya. In August of 2012, he was convicted of mass murder, causing a fatal explosion, and terrorism. Two teams of court-appointed forensic psychiatrists examined Anders before his trial. The first report diagnosed Anders as having paranoid schizophrenia. The second evaluation concluded that Anders was not psychotic during the attacks nor during the evaluation. He was instead diagnosed as having narcissistic personality disorder. On the 24th of August 2012, Oslo District Court delivered its verdict, finding Anders sane and guilty of murdering 77 people. He was sentenced to 21 years in prison in a form of preventive detention that requires a minimum of 10 years incarceration and the possibility of 1 or more extensions for as long as he is deemed a danger to society. Number 7, 8 years old. It just goes to show age doesn't matter even in the darkest of corners. In November of 2015, an unnamed 8-year-old was charged with murder and his case was to be handled in juvenile court. He was charged with the murder of his 1-year-old sister while his mother was out. The mother was also charged with reckless manslaughter for leaving a young child with someone who was considered to be dangerous. The police report suggested that the baby was not noticed as inactive until the next morning. The boy in question was subsequently sent to spend close to 10 years in prison, making him 18 by the time he would be released and keeping all the children around him safe until then. The mother was dismissed of all charges filed against her after the sentencing of her son. It's always saddening to hear about these situations and good to see that action has been taken against of these violent acts. Number 6, Edmund Kemper. Edmund Emil Kemper III is an American serial killer who abducted and murdered several women in the early 1970s. He moved to Montana with his abusive mother at a very young age before returning to California, where he murdered his parental grandparents when he was 15. He was subsequently diagnosed by court psychiatrists as suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and sentenced to a state hospital as a criminally insane juvenile. Upon his release at the age of 21, he began his killing spree by targeting women who were hitchhiking on the side of the road and killing them in secluded locations. After some time, he killed his mother and his mother mother's friend before he promptly turned himself into the authorities. In 1993, he was found sane to trial and requested for the death penalty for his crimes. However, capital punishment was temporarily suspended in California, so he instead received 8 life sentences. Since then, Kemper has been incarcerated in the California Medical Facility, and we won't be seeing him outside the world for quite some time. Number 5. Mary Bell. Mary Bell is an English woman who in 1968, at the age of 10, strangled to death 2 younger brothers in Scotswood. The 2 boys were Martin Brown and Brian Howie, aged 4 and 3 respectively. Between the 2 killings, Mary is believed to have broken into a nursery and vandalized the inside with messages claiming responsibility for the murder of Martin Brown. A few months later, she strangled Brian Howie and carved an M in the boy's stomach, which eventually led the police discovering her connection to the crimes. Mary was taken to court in December of the same year and was given the sentence of manslaughter in grounds of diminished responsibility. Not too long after, a court-appointed psychiatrist diagnosed of her suffering from classic symptoms of psychopathy and was described by the judge as dangerous. She was released from prison in 1980 at the age of 23 and continued to live under a new name. Number 4. Kip Kinkle. On May the 20th, 1998, 15-year-old Kinkle was suspended from Thurston High School in Springfield, Oregon for being in possession of a loaded stolen handgun which he purchased from a friend for $110. When his friend's father realized the gun was missing, he called the police and supplied names to the police as to which of the students could have taken the gun. Kip's name wasn't included, but it was later found in his locker. Later that day, Kip was confronted by his father about being sent to military school if he didn't fix his behavior. Kip responded to this by getting a gun from his father's room and shooting his dad in the head before killing his mum shortly after, and then making his way to Thurston High School and conducted a mass shooting. Once he was apprehended, he tried to convince the police to shoot him, claiming that he wanted to commit suicide but was unable to. In the end, Kip was sentenced to 111 years in prison without any chance of parole, which is undoubtedly a very long time. Number 3. David Brom. David was from a simple home in Rochester, Minnesota. He lived with his parents along with his 3 siblings who he usually got along with, but it all changed very quickly on February the 17th, 1988, when David got into an argument with his father close to midnight. David walked out of his room and waited until 3 a.m. the next day. He then proceeded to make his way into the parents' bedroom and attacked his father with an axe. After his father was no longer struggling, David went to attack his mother, ending her life. It wasn't long before his siblings saw what he had done, and David proceeded to attack them as well. The bodies of the family were discovered later that evening. During the trial, a girl whom David had confessed to testified against him and assisted in getting David a life sentence in prison for his unforgettable crime. Number 2. Willie Broskett Jr. Willie Broskett Jr. is an American convicted murderer whose numerous crimes committed while still being a minor led to a change in New York state law so that juveniles as young as 13 could be tried as an adult for murder and would face the same penalties. He has been in either prison or reformatives for all but 18 months since 1971 and has spent all but 100 years of his adult life in custody. He is currently serving a sentence of 82 years to life. On March 19, 1978, Broskett, then 15 years old, shot and killed Noel Perez on a train during an attempted robbery. 8 days later, Broskett and another accomplice shot dead another man, Moses Perez, at the back of another subway train in New York. Broskett was trialed and pleaded guilty to both murders and sentenced to only 5 years in prison, which caused public outcry. However, he was never released. His botched attempts to escape from prison proved to be the factor that secured his stay in prison for his whole life. Now he will never walk out in the open for as long as he lives. Number 1. Amarjit Sada. Amarjit was only 8 years old, but the young boy was labelled as the youngest serial killer in India, having killed 3 babies. He was born in 1998, residing in the village of Mussoorie. In 2006, the boy murdered his 6-year-old cousin, and then a few months later, he killed his own sister, who was only 8 months old. Both crimes were unreported because his family considered it as family matters. However, the village was shaken when he abducted a neighbour's daughter. Her mother was attending tending to her household chores while the 6-year-old baby was asleep inside the village primary school. When she returned, her daughter could not be found. The villagers confronting Amarjeet, who admitted to abducting the baby. He led them to a shallow grave where he attempted to hide the body. When questioned by police, Amarjeet only smiled and asked for biscuits while recounting the tale of how he killed the infant. Amarjeet was charged with murder and tried as juvenile but would only serve the maximum sentence of 3 years. So that has been 10 people who will spend their lives in prison. If you did enjoy the video or found it interesting, then why not go check out one of our other videos by clicking the video on screen now. Before you do that though, as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss a single upload. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Hey everybody, how's it going? Extreme Trends here. When a crime is committed, we immediately jump to the conclusion that the culprit will be spending time behind bars. But have we ever stopped and considered exactly how long some of these people actually spend in prison when they get convicted? One, where his aim was to kill exactly 64 people and was believed to be a part of a massacre competition with another serial killer who was convicted of 53 murders in 1992. He was arrested in 2006 and once apprehended, he led the police to where he kept the bodies of his victims. Alexandra was kept in a glass cage for his own protection and was granted the sentence of life in prison, with the first 15 years spent in solitary confinement. A punishment clearly fitting for the crime he committed, as the chessboard killer is a Russian serial killer who is believed to have killed between 48 and 60 people in Bista Park in Moscow. His first murder is believed to have taken place in 1992, before he moved to a high level of murder in 2001. Well, today we're going to be taking a look at 10 people who spent their lives in prison. Number 10, Alexandra Pikushkin. Some people kill others because they suffer from illnesses, but this man committed his crime seemingly just for sport. Alexandra, also known